Now, fearing a backlash against Americans, U.S. officials have ordered an evacuation of non-essential American embassy personnel in Cairo. For more on the U.S. reaction, we're joined by VOA's Jeff Seldin, live from our location overlooking the U.S. Capitol. Thank you, Jeff, on this July 4th.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Well, thank you. First of all, give us what exactly is the U.S.'s position on what happened in Egypt?
Well, this is a very delicate situation for the United States. You have a democratically elected government that was deposed by basically the military. And all along, the United States has been very careful in wording any of its answers to what it thought about the situation in Egypt. The State Department and the White House both saying repeatedly that the preferred resolution would be a peaceful one and would be a political one. Of course, that's not what happened. The military stepped in and decided to remove Morsi and install this interim leader. Late last night, President Barack Obama issued a statement calling it a very fluid situation, saying the U.S. was very concerned that the Egyptian military decided it needed to get involved and remove Morsi, but also encouraged Egypt to move forward, to return to a civilian government and to what he called an inclusive process. Notably, though, President Obama did not use the word coup in any point during the statement.
Now, Jeff, if you can expound on that a little bit. Also, President Obama said he's going to ask some of the agencies here in Washington to look into the repercussions and the implications of what happened in Egypt in terms of how the U.S. government should respond. What is at stake here?
Well, there's a lot at stake, specifically billions of dollars in U.S. aid over many years. The amount of U.S. aid to Egypt just about every year is about $1.5 billion, most of that going to the Egyptian military. Now, we also heard from one of the leading senators, Democratic Senator Patrick Leahy, who sits on the committee that oversees foreign aid, and he said U.S. law is very clear that if a government, a democratically elected government, is deposed of by a military coup or decree, U.S. aid is cut off. And as the military is basically running the show and is dependent on U.S. aid, what happens next? And of course, that's a key question because the Middle East has been very volatile. You have a crisis going on in Syria. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has been back to the region recently trying to restart the Middle East peace process with the Israelis and the Palestinians. The last thing the U.S. probably wants to see is an unstable Egypt.
And of course, an unstable region, Egypt being regarded as the stabilizing force within that region. What do you see now as the position that either the U.S. or the United Nations will take in terms of how Egypt can still be effective when it's going through this transition?
Well, I think what the United States is looking for right now is simply a stable government in Egypt, a return to a democratically elected or at least a civilian government to get back on the track of elections and democracy. But specifically, the U.S. and the UN, they don't want to see any spillover. They don't want to see any of the internal strife, the internal disagreements spread and cause problems. Egypt, of course, borders on Israel, and Israel borders on Syria, and they don't want to see anything that could make any of the crises or any of the situations that are delicate right now in the Middle East any worse.
Well, thank you so much. Jeff Seldin talking to us from our location overlooking the U.S. Capitol here in Washington.